I was actually moved to tears. It was so powerful. I couldn't understand why these medicines weren't available to people who were suffering and didn't have other good means of treatment available to them. Sometimes when we're in a challenging situation in life, our thoughts can get stuck in a loop. Negative thoughts just continue and continue and continue. And psilocybin can, in a therapeutic setting, can function like a big hand coming in and jiggling the needle on a skipping record so that a new tune can resume. The magic pill doesn't transform the individual. It simply allows what's already there to come forward and be examined in a new way.
Well, it's interesting. We can't really attribute a mystical experience to a drug or a magic pill or to the peyote button. We were ready at some time when that happened, the synchronicity that something latent was ready to be opened, to be uncovered, discovered, and recovered, or something to be looked at that couldn't have been looked at in any other way. And the timing, the circumstances, the people, what's called the set and setting allowed or contributed or was a confluence to something, to a readiness.
Set being the internal, the intention that you bring to it, and the setting being the setting that you create. All those two actually, set is more primary, because the set also then determines what kind of a setting you set up, you choose. And when you think about it, that's actually true of everything. Right? It's all of our experience. Like the experience we're having right now is a function of the set and setting that we bring to it.
When we were enrolling participants for the study, we had to be exceptionally careful not to give them the impression that we were treating the cancer. One of our participants was a woman in her middle 50s. She was a mother, and she had led a fairly conservative life. She had attended church on and off, and she had never tried a psychedelic in her life. And she sought help by enrolling in this study because she was having repetitive negative thoughts. And she wanted to see if she could be a bit more free in her thinking and not be so consumed with worry. And she didn't know how long she had to live, but something told her that maybe psilocybin could help stop this pattern that she was in of negative thinking. I admired her because she was so brave. She didn't know what was going to happen when she took psilocybin, but she arrived with a very open attitude. And about 4 hours in to the active session, the session with the psilocybin, she started to move her body in a way that was very riveting for those of us in the room. It felt as if we were seeing something very unique and powerful. And she went into this deep inner process that involved moving her hands in repetitive ways, and it looked as if she was working very hard, but we didn't interrupt her. We didn't know what was going on. Eventually, the time came when we needed to take a blood pressure because we were looking at safety. And I just gently put a hand on her shoulder. And then she reached up to take off her eye shades, and I asked her, how are you doing? And she looked up at me with little tears in her eyes, and she said, it feels like healing. Interestingly, she outlived her original prognosis by a significant amount, and she found that the healing she received during the psilocybin session was helpful in improving the quality of the time that she had remaining.
I actually came into this research with a bit of skepticism, although some of my colleagues with whom I'm working on the project didn't have much skepticism, but I was by no means a true believer as we set out on this research.
Roland Griffiths is a psychopharmacologist at Johns Hopkins University who researches mystical experiences induced by psychedelics.
We have one study now running in cancer patients, Again, these are patients who are anxious or depressed secondary to their cancer diagnosis. It's a existential anxiety in effect. And the inspiration for the study comes from work done by Stan Grof and others back in the 1950s and 60s, as well as very recently, Charlie Grob and Alicia Danforth, who did a pilot study at UCLA showing beneficial effects of psilocybin in cancer patients. We're using higher doses and a different kind of design to look at that. And our results are blinded, but they're very much in line with Charlie Grob's results.
Drawing on the work of earlier researchers, the Johns Hopkins team has written guidelines for safe research.
So set and setting is absolutely key to the nature of the experiences that can unfold with psilocybin. In our case, all our volunteers are very carefully screened. They're prepared with a minimum of 8 contact hours with their guides, who are skilled clinicians, prior to their first session. They're in the presence of 2 guides throughout their session, and then aftercare is provided. These are very special and contextualized conditions under which psilocybin is administered. So very often there's a centeredness that people come out with after an experience of this sort that that lets them be more accepting of the fact that they may be dying. It's very touching to see people interact with their own family members, and they'll say, you know, I'm very sad that I'm dying. I'm going to miss you, but you know, there's, in another sense, it's okay, and everything's okay. And when you hear someone put that into words for their own family members, their own caretakers, they're beginning to take care of their own caretakers, it's very moving.